Yes, we have live. All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us on your ALG Weekly as we come to you every Monday at 11:30. Come to you with new guests, new people, and we come to you with community members, community leaders, and talk to you about things that are going on with the community and actually whatever is happening, but things that really touch our community. And as I tell you every week, we come to you with people who have resources, community members, business owners. But today we are coming to you with the future of the community. We're coming to you with the youth of the community. And today we have two great students from our youth empowerment, and they have both been involved in the past with the African Leadership Group. And today we have them to talk about self-identity, talk about Black History Month, and talk about everything that it goes in that. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Mariem Dia and Shakinah. Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Ladies, I'm
Good
sorry.
morning.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing
Good.
well.
A little tired.
Tired?
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was a Monday, day off from school, so.
Yep. But I'm still tired.
All right, great. So, thank you for joining me this morning. As I said earlier, our theme of the day will be talking about Black History Month and self-identity. But before we go into that, as introduction, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself for people who are maybe seeing you for the first time and are not familiar with you? If you could just introduce yourself, your name, where are you originally from, and whether you identify as African, African American.
Yes, good morning, community members. My name is Mariem Dia. I'm originally from Senegal in West Africa, and I identify as an African American.
Good morning. My name is Shakinah. My mom is from Cote d'Ivoire. My dad's from Louisiana. I identify as African American.
All right, great. And I should say that I identify as African. Actually, you can hear that from my accent, but let's move on from that. So, you're from, I mean, your mom's from Cote d'Ivoire, and your dad's from Louisiana, and you identify as African American. Both your parents are from Senegal, and you identify as African American. So, and I would guess that your mom probably identifies as an African immigrant, and both your parents identify as African immigrants. Do you see a difference? I mean, obviously there's a difference because you identify one way or the other. But what's the biggest difference, or how have you come to that decision of I actually see myself more as an African American instead of just African?
I would say my parents grew up in Africa. They were raised in Senegal. Since I was raised here and I grew up around an American culture, that is why I identify as African American. I don't think African American is a way that Black Americans should identify, because they're Black Americans. They were brought here obviously against their will, but we come here willingly, and I think we have our African roots and we come here as to be American. So I say African American in that sense.
Okay, so then you mean African American as like literally African and American, but not as Black American in a sense.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
When I identify as African American, I think there's kind of a double standard here, because African American means that you are originally African of descent, but you were born in America. But I'm of African descent and I was born in America. So I think it's kind of as Mariem said, African Americans shouldn't identify as African American because they are Americans. So I think we need to come up with a new term for us, people like me and Mariem, so that we know and our counterparts know that our parents are from Africa, or one of our parents are from Africa, but we were born here.
Okay.
Or raised here.
Right. So, I get what you're saying, and there's actually a new movement that's coming up to kind of address that self-identity crisis, and it goes by ALGs, means Americans descendants of slaves, which were formerly known as Negroes, Black Americans, African Americans, and now a lot of people are identifying themselves as ALGs, meaning American descendants of slaves. But being here, there is a difference, right? Even though you identify as African American, and you mean that in the sense that you were born in America or you live in America, but your roots are still African. To what extent to what extent does each one of those identities go, right? To what extent are you African, and to what extent are you American?
I would say I'm African first, always representing my country, my roots. I would say I am American just because I live here, just because this is where I grew up. I think that's as far as it goes. Obviously, I contribute to society. I'm a part of this society, so I contribute as I can and as I will. But I'm African first, and being American just means living here for me and being a part of the society. Nothing more, nothing less than that for me.
Yep. I'm always going to be African first, especially because, most of our culture, especially where my mom is from, those are exactly where slaves were taken from. So I'm always going to be African first because their culture is amazing, and the African Americans here, their culture was ripped away from them. And if I can help them in any way understand my culture, because not all Africans are from West Africa, or other slaves that were taken from West Africa. There's some that are coming from North Africa, South Africa. So if I can help them understand a little bit of what I do, what I eat, the fufu that my mom cooks, I think it'll be great, because just our culture is beautiful, and some people think it's crazy and, witchcraft, because we have different religions. There's Christianity over there, there's you can be Muslim over there, so yeah.
Yep. So and I'm just going to digress from the point real quick, but I know you guys are on TikTok. How did you feel about the Fufu challenge that was, and for not for all the older folks watching out there, TikTok is actually an application, but we don't have time to teach you all things about TikTok. But how did you guys feel about the TikTok challenge, about the Fufu?
There's two ways I looked at it. I think it was great that people were trying to try new cultures, try new foods, explore. However, there's a lot of people being disrespectful about it. There's one thing to not like
but there's one thing to be disrespectful.
There's one thing to be disrespectful, like spitting it out, rubbing your tongue, trying to get the taste. Like, that's doing too much to me. If you're going to record yourself doing that and you don't like it, then don't upload the recording, right, if that's your reaction. So I think it's really interesting. I like the fact that people are reaching out and trying new foods, trying different cultures, especially seeing the Black Americans that live in the U.S. here, trying that and connecting to their culture, many of them.
Yeah, their roots.
Yeah, it was both ways that it's both ways.
Okay. So it was crazy to me, because I love seeing them go outside their comfort zone and trying fufu and trying, goosey, and trying jollof. Nigerian jollof is better. I don't care. I don't care.
I wish you did not just say that. But okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. But one thing I hated seeing was that there was more hate from Black Americans on the fufu than there were from white Americans. I've seen more Black Americans on TikTok saying that they hated it and spitting it out, saying that they didn't wish they spent their money on it. But then when the white Americans were doing it, they were being disrespectful. They were saying, it wasn't for my palate, but I'm glad I tried it. I'm not going to try it again, but it was a really glad experience that I tried it. The African Americans that I've seen on my For You page, they were just spitting out, being downright disrespectful. To see people of my skin color disrespecting my culture really hurt for me. And this is why there's a huge gap in the Black community. Because we don't know, we can always be respectful to other cultures. But when it comes to our brother and sisters' cultures, there's always that disrespect. There's always that passive aggressiveness. That it really hurt me to see.
Yeah, and I feel, I share that same feeling. I guess for me it was the lack of respect and the lack of compassion, really, because it's like, we welcome you, we want to open this, but even to this day, there's still a picking and choosing of what part of the culture we want to adopt. When in reality, when we open ourselves up, even if you don't like it, you don't necessarily accept us, but the respect is the minimum of it. But let's go back to the topic. That was just a drive, and I guess the African parents probably don't know what
No,
TikTok is or what we're talking about. But moving on from that, so we are in America, right? Let's be honest about what goes on in this society. To a certain extent, when you're out there and people see you, to them, as a black person, first of all, you're black American, right? If you have an accent like me, when you open your mouth up, then people may guess, oh, where are you from? But if you do not have that accent, it doesn't matter whether you're first generation or whether you migrated to this country as young, but people will still look at you as a black American. How do you navigate that society, knowing everything that comes with being a black American?
I don't see no shame in people looking at me as a black American. I take pride in it, quite honestly. I think we're a part of them, we're a part of their society. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't really be here, be allowed to be here. So when it comes to society, obviously we have a very corrupt society when it comes to the treatment of black Americans here in the US especially. But I take it as an opportunity to stand up and be a part of the movement to change what's going on. Personally, I'd like to become a lawyer to fix some of those things that are going on, to become a part of the law, become a policymaker, change some of those policies. So I see no shame in it. I take pride in it, being able to say we're a part of them. Because if you look at me, you're going to say I'm a black American. If I tell my story, then you'll know. But I take pride in it. I just go with it, I guess.
I feel the exact same way. You look at me, you think I'm a Negro, right? But I am, but I'm not at some point. It's first generation Americans over here. It's hard for us to pick our identity because we either have to identify as African or American. There's no in between, especially because of American culture, especially what our ancestors have been through. But I feel as though our culture is amazing. We have so many different skin tones, and we have so many different, even in Africa, there's white Africans. And I just feel like as Americans over here, and America as a total, need to fix the way we view each other. Because if we see a white person or a Caucasian, we see that they're from America, right? But white people don't only come from America. They come from Europe, they come from Africa, they come from
Caribbean.
You're right. You can see even white people in Asia. And there's black people in Africa. When you think of a black person, you think of Africa, and that's something as us Americans need to fix in our minds. Black people come everywhere. So we just need to fix that as a total, and I don't think that's going to happen, hopefully. I'm hoping it happens in the next couple of years. My generation will fix that.
Well, I can tell you, listening to you guys, we have great hope in your generation. So some of these things will hopefully be fixed by your generation. But even so, with everything that goes on, and just thinking of last summer, the protests and everything that's going on, having African parents myself, I know the way we see things and the way our parents see things are sometimes different, because we may have had the chance to come here really young or being able to grow in the society, which for their case it's not. They came here when they were already grown, and there's a certain way that society may have forced them to view African Americans or black Americans. So how do you deal with that inside of the house? Because sometimes most of us are just forced. When you're in the house, you gotta forget your American identity and you just have to be African.
Personally, for me, in our household, we have conversations about everything. Of course, African first. We try to speak the language at home. Our parents speak to us in our native tongue at home, just to keep our culture alive, because we don't want that forgotten. We want to be able to pass that down through generations to remember where we come from. But through conversation, really, because there's some things my parents might not know that I know. There's some things they may know that I don't know about my culture, about Senegal. So I say through conversation, that's how we change perspectives. That's how we get people to change their viewpoints. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, especially because our parents, they grew up in that culture, and then when they were adults and they had children, that's when they adapted to American culture. But us, we're adapting to American culture, and we're having to, nitpick of our parents' culture. And especially because, like, our parents, they know their native tongue, and we're constantly, us, first generation, we're kind of having to correct our parents on English.
Sometimes,
and
yes.
So it's hard. It's really, really hard, especially because we're either, like I said before, we're either African or American. In the household, we're African because our parents are African, right? So our parents are trying to keep that culture alive, especially like my mom, she speaks English a lot because she's around a lot of English speakers. So even, sometimes she forgets her French, or sometimes it's kind of hard and she's kind of having to sound out her words. Like even when I'm on the phone with my uncle, she's like, Anne, you forgot French? So it's even hard. Even me, I can't speak to my grandma because I don't know French that well. I took French for 6 years? But because I didn't learn it, I didn't grow up learning, it's not my first language, it's kind of hard for me to speak it.
Yeah, and even if you learn language, it's just hard switching language. It's like just when you speak two, three, or four languages.
It's easier to learn it as an adult than.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about the other side of this coin, which is when you are inside the house, you are basically being forced to be African. But what about when you are outside of the house? Do you feel like as though are you being forced to kind of suppress your African identity within you? Or do you go out there fully embracing your American identity? Have you found the right middle?
It's kind of, so when I'm in the household, because my mom, she understands Spanish, English, but it's kind of hard for her. I kind of have to, add an accent to my certain words so she understands it, right? But then when I'm in, I feel so disappointed in myself, and this is something I have to fix in myself. But when I'm outside, I try to speak more proper. I don't try and speak French to my mom. I'm not like, mama, or out in public, I'm like, hey, mom. Or with my dad, I'm like, papa. No, I'm like, dad. So that's something that I feel like I need to change within myself. I want to embrace my culture, especially us immigrants, the children of immigrants. In America, we feel like we need to suppress our roots. With every immigrant, our Hispanics, our Asians, our Africans, we always feel this way. Or, and let me not speak for everybody, I feel this way. Because we feel as though, because our parents are immigrants, we have to be cautious about what we do. Because some of us are here illegally. So you will see more of them speaking more proper than speaking, slang of their language. So they're very, very careful about what they do. And that's something that America needs to fix. Our law system needs to fix that. Because nobody's illegal in stolen land. That's something that they need to fix.
Repeat that again for the people who did not hear.
Nobody is illegal in stolen land.
Yep. Nobody.
Whew. All right.
You heard it here first.
you did hear that here first, though. But Mariem, I'm just gonna let you touch on that, and it feels like though you're being forced to code switch, it's code switching, and black people in America just in general are forced to code switch,
right? Especially because it's viewed as ghetto.
Yeah.
When we do it, it's ghetto, but then let a white woman do it, it's viewed as fashion. You see it on the runway. You see the Kardashians doing it.
It's ghetto or uneducated. When it's an immigrant doing it, it's seen as being uneducated.
Right.
Even it's an African American who was born here, black American, it's seen as ghetto. But I'm just gonna let you touch on that.
For me, I would say through elementary school, I did try to suppress that African part of me. I didn't want people to know. I'm also being Muslim. There was just so much stereotypes about Muslims.
You have a double whammy there.
Double whammy there, being Muslim and African. People tended to make fun of me a lot. I grew up being shy just because I would be bullied for being African, being called an African booty scratcher, all types of names. So especially during that time when ISIS was really heavily being used, presence was around, it was just, I tried to suppress all of that and just be seen as a shy black girl. That's all I wanted to be. But as I went into middle school and starting high school, I started to realize how important and how
beautiful our culture is.
Yeah, how important it is to me I started learning more about it. I started doing more research about it, and I just started to fall in love with the culture, started falling in love with the title, because I don't think everybody wants to have this title now. Everybody wants to be African.
Everybody wants to be Hispanic. Yeah,
right. So
they have to have a culture.
I just see the beauty in that now, and I just claim it fully.
Especially because America doesn't have a culture.
Yeah.
Their culture, like hamburgers and pizzas, they're stolen from other.
They're taking it.
Right,
It's pieces of everybody's culture, and they call it a quote unquote melting pot.
The melting pot.
But I don't really like that term.
Right. So now you'll see us like, I'm more comfortable saying I'm African because America doesn't have a culture. I'd rather be having a culture or not being. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay, cool. I'm sorry that we were just having some technical issues right there, but we'll get right back into the topic. So yes. So here's the thing, and let's touch a little bit on the culture too, right? How do you feel with the adoption of African culture lately? Because I mean, since for the past couple of years, the African culture has been adapted or seen as mainstream. Mm-hmm. Do you view that positively? Being an African, coming from Africa, being in an African household, African parents, and being from an African country, and seeing sometimes parts of your culture being adapted as mainstream and people outside of the culture embracing that.
I think it has its pros and cons. Obviously, when it becomes mainstream, there's going to be love, and then there's going to be hate as well. I like the fact that people are finally celebrating us. We're powerful. We have everything. All the resources are found in Africa.
Right.
All the people are found. Everybody originated from Africa. So I think it's powerful in the sense that people are finally noticing the power of Africa, the power of our culture,
it's not
the
just
power
animals
of our languages.
roaming free.
Yes, because it was you sleep with lions and bears. You have a, so now it's cool to see that people are visiting Africa. They're going to see what it's actually like, seeing that we have cities, we have economies that are built and all these things. The cons would be people still find hate in every situation. They find a reason to hate in every situation. But I don't know. And there's also the con of people think they need to come save Africa. We have these white saviors trying to come save us. Really, when they think they're saving us, they're really taking our resources away and exploiting them for themselves. In a lot of countries, you'll see they're exploiting soccer players. They're exploiting our fish. They're exploiting a lot of our resources. A lot of our resources are being exploited now. So we have these white saviors who think they're helping us, but they're really hurting us by taking our resources slowly. So there's pros and cons to the.
Just like Mariem said, there's pros and cons. One thing that I'm very going to be looking out as I grow up, as I become an adult, is our culture being stolen. Because our African Americans over here, they don't have a culture. They made their own culture, right? But I feel like they're exploiting our land and our resources. So I feel like very soon, braids are not going to be, black for, I don't know how to say it to where I'm not being gatekeeping, but I'm going to just say it as it is. Braids were made fun of when black women did it. But then a Kardashian did it. And it became, now you see it all over the runway. Now you see it everywhere. That's one thing I hate about America. When people of color do it, it is ghetto and it's trashy. But then let a white woman or a white man do it, and it's viewed as, wow, stylish. From Africa, our fabric, when we made clothes for church, it was viewed as ugly. Our food, it was viewed as smelly. But now it's becoming a trend. And that's one thing that I'm absolutely dreading and seeing, because soon enough here, that Fufu thing from TikTok, it's going to be a trend. It's already being dialed down. Like, people are not doing it anymore. They just did it because it was on TikTok. Especially like with the birria tacos as well. Though that's already dead because people did it. It was a trend. And it's very sad to see, because I really wish it was in the lights every single time we talk about it.
Also, with I wouldn't say is our culture being stolen from us, but is it being overappreciated? Is it being taken too far?
Yeah, and I think for me that's sometimes the fear is for us it's culture. It's been there for centuries and
Right.
it's still gonna be there. Now if we play too much with it being a trend, if it's a trend for 2 years, I don't want you to look down on me 2 years, 3 years from now when I wear my kente and you'll be
Right.
like, that's been out of style. It's
Right.
not style for me, it's not trend.
It's my way
For-
of life.
right, it's more than that. So the danger of having it in the mainstream is everything in the mainstream has a very short life right now.
Mhm.
And so I
Everything's
don't
about
right, I don't want the value of it to go down
Down.
just because it was mainstream for
Right.
whatever period of time that you decided to appreciate it. But so here's the thing. We just on the last question, both of you touched on the fact that you feel that there's a lot that's going on back home, whether it is being exploited or violence going on there. And when we come to America as black people, there's also a lot of that going on. As people, I mean, just being black and the fact that we are here, obviously we see ourselves as, being potential victims of whatever being comes with being black in America,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether it is just driving and being assaulted by the police. But within, because we have African parents, most of us are not ready for that conversation, right? I have yet to see an African parent give the talk, as we say.
Right.
Tell, if you are arrested by the police, this is how you should do it. This is how you should act, right? Or tell their kids about racism and all of that. And
Right.
and it's most of it is understandable because our parents grew up in societies where, there was, everybody was black, almost everybody around you was black, and so it's hard to, when you migrate in a country as an adult, to switch code, to switch that. But have you guys had that conversation with your parents, or do you feel like it's a reverse conversation to where you are the one who actually have to give the talk to your parents?
Yeah. One thing my dad always says is in Africa they're the majority, but when they come here they're suddenly a minority, and it's a hard switch, like you said. But with this talk, I think I adopted it. This mental of I've always been scared of the police since I was little, so it's just something I think I adopted being in American society. I wasn't around many black people in school, but it's just something I adopted. Being shy, you sit back and you observe a lot, and I observed a lot, I still do. So I just adopted it from looking at how people acted around police, watching the TV, seeing black people being killed at the hand of police. So I adopted it. I've never had the conversation with my parents, so to say, since I've always been scared of the police. It was never like you have to know. I think the one reason why we haven't had the conversation is because, like I said, in Africa they're the majority, but they're taught how to deal with the police in a different way.
Yeah.
Or they're taught respect in a different way.
Right.
We have kind of different views of respect here versus in Africa.
Because of the culture.
Right. So in Africa, it's a lot of don't look people in the eye, look down when you talk
Miss,
to
ma'am,
people.
madam, sir.
Yes, talk to people like. So I think they did. I've always seen my parents deal with the police like that. I think it's just how they are. When you come to America, especially as an immigrant,
Yeah.
you have to use that respect.
Mhm.
You have to use that yes, ma'am, yes, sir, because you don't want any trouble with people. So I don't think it had to be a conversation, quite honestly.
Yeah, I agree exactly what Mariem said. They are the majority over there, but over here they're 1%, right? So especially, it's kind of hard because my dad is from here, right? He's a big black man, very big, he's tall, he's 6 feet, and he's 200 pounds, right? So he is already a threat. And I remember this one thing, and I'll never forget it. I am 12 years old. My dad said, he's from Louisiana, the most racist place, right? He said he would never think that he would get to see me C12 because he thought he'd either be dead or in jail. And that's one thing that stuck to me. That stuck to me for a very long time. That is one thing that us as Americans need to fix. And my mom, she is a light-skinned woman. You guys all seen her, right?
Mhm.
So I don't think, people probably think she's mixed with white or something. So I am not afraid for my mom. She is a very strong woman. She has her doctorate.
Mhm.
Yeah, like they're taught differently over there how to respect police than they are over here.
How to
So-
respect people in general.
Yes, like when you're over there, if you don't say hey, you call them Miss Ma'am. You don't call nobody by their
Hello,
first name.
yeah.
It's always, especially you're not related to somebody, but you'll call them auntie, uncle. It's
Mhm.
like that over there. You always show somebody respect like you're related to them. And over here, it's not like that. You don't know nobody, you don't talk to them.
Exactly.
Because, especially over here, because of the crime. So,
All right, so let's switch this conversation now. Let's talk about Black History Month, right? I was about a week, 2 weeks ago in a clubhouse room. You guys have probably heard of Clubhouse by now.
no.
No? Okay, so Clubhouse is this new app. It's basically like
Oh,
WhatsApp,
yes.
but
yeah.
it's open. So like it's vocal conversation. So it's basically just a live radio show where
Yep.
people can come in the
Yes.
room and
Yeah, I
talk.
think I've seen that.
Right, and the subject was, should Africans celebrate Black History Month?
Oh,
And that's, it didn't just talk about Africans, but specifically of African immigrants who are in the US and first generations.
yes. Yes, they should. Especially the first generation Americans.
Yep.
Here. We're growing up with, I have a triple whammy, like Shakinah said. I'm Black, I'm African, and I'm Muslim on top of that. That's three things that this country looks at me, or
It's
if they
viewed as
hear
wrong.
wrong. Exactly. So even African immigrants, I think they should celebrate Black History Month.
Yep.
Why? Because if it wasn't for the people who came, if it wasn't for those people like who stood up for civil rights, all those activists, we wouldn't be allowed to immigrate here.
Right.
We would be allowed here to look for a better life for our family back home, for our future children. So I think we should celebrate. We're all brothers and sisters. We come from the same country.
Right.
That's I think
It's a-
Shakinah.
It is kind of a, especially with my generation, it is kind of a yes and a no question. There's no in between. Because especially with my generation, like I'm on TikTok the other day, and there was a video like February 14th was a time that mixed Americans,
Yes,
like black
yes.
and white, like people, mixed children, that was their time to stop
Biracial.
celebrating Black History Month because they were mixed with
They're
white.
biracial, so
Right.
that halfway point is your stop time.
Right.
Like,
Wait, how?
So-
I never heard of this.
Okay, so mixed Americans, one white parent and one black parent.
or,
Right.
yeah, or any other parent,
Right.
just half Black.
If you're just half black, there was a certain time where you needed to stop celebrating Black History Month because you were not,
14th,
because you were inbred,
half Black,
and that's
so half celebrate.
So
Black.
instead of a month, you just get 2 weeks.
You get,
Yep. Like yesterday was their last day for Black History Month.
That's what
Huh?
that's what's speculated in here.
Right.
So,
All over social media.
but who
I-
are you to tell somebody what month
Right.
of their culture they can and can't
that's when
celebrate?
Okay, I must confess, I'm confused. I've honestly never heard of this.
It's just starting now because
a
our
new thing,
generation
yeah.
is
Okay,
starting.
so here's the other thing, right? And I have to say, for me personally, since I moved to this country, close to 6 years now, I've been celebrating Black History Month, and I always look forward to
Black.
my Black History Month reading list, especially just reading it. I feel like it's the month when I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna get books and reading. But one thing I've been doing lately is during Black History Month, I'm mostly reading African authors,
Yep.
right? And these may be African authors that live in the US, but they're African authors. And one of the arguments about why African immigrants shouldn't celebrate Black History Month is when a lot of us celebrate Black History Month, we still want to share, right, figures of Black history around the world. Like sharing pictures of, let's say, Nelson Mandela or the first female president in Africa, sharing that. So the argument against it was, if you're going to celebrate Black History Month, it was made historically to celebrate the achievements of Black Americans. So the connotation of Black back then and the connotation of Black right now is a little bit different.
Yeah.
So in the UK, they have their own Black History Month. I believe it's in October,
Yeah.
September. So Black history is Black history. When the UK celebrated, we were kind of celebrating it too. So when you say Nelson Mandela, he has an impact on Black history. He changed laws in South Africa that affected the US in some way, somehow. The first female African president. That shows, hey, America has hope for a female president. The fact that Africa beat you in a female president, like, come on,
That's,
like,
you know,
that's
especially
history
your
in
culture.
itself. Like,
Yeah.
that's probably like what, one of the first women presidents ever. I think it's an interesting topic because Africa has a lot of impact on
the
everyday
world.
lives of Black Americans, especially.
Yes.
Especially.
Uh-huh.
We have our, like, for example, Barack Obama visits Africa, different countries in Africa. Why? Because Africa has an impact
His
on the
mom
Black
is
Americans.
African.
His dad
His
is
dad,
African.
yeah.
So I think it's an interesting topic. I don't know why people would want to out us a part of this month. I
Yeah.
think I personally celebrate Black History Month by doing more research on Black. I do that throughout the year because I just love Black history.
Yeah, that's one thing us Black Americans have taken from Caucasian. Because back then, when there was Jim Crow era, if you were mixed with white, you weren't inbred, right? You were a house slave, or it was just one thing that we adopted that I wish we wouldn't have adopted. That's something that they're making a joke out of nowadays on TikTok, on social media, on Instagram, on Snapchat, that they need to quit. Because we need to stop this trend of, if you're mixed with anything else with Black, you are ugly, you are trash. That's something that we
I
need
don't
to
think
stop.
it's trash. I think people who are biracial get more hype over people who are straight Black, people who are dark skinned. It's a whole other colorism thing
Yeah,
within our
like-
community, but
So
all based on Black history as well. So.
okay, so here's the thing. Obviously, when like I never heard about this half-month thing where you just get 2 weeks and all of that. But obviously, you guys being on social media and all of that, I thought I was very on social media, but I never heard of this, so I probably need to update myself. but being on social media, you obviously see more than the average people who are not on social media, right?
Yeah.
So before mainstream catches on a lot of things are actually happening on social media. To what extent does that affect you in your view of yourself and how you define yourself? To see people who look like you being depicted in a certain kind of way on social media.
Social media is a platform, again, with pros and cons. Especially for me, on TikTok at least, I see a lot of African Americans standing up, speaking out, educating others on Black history. I have ladies who are showing the Negro dunk that they used to do. All these
Right.
things, they're showing them, educating people, because a lot of people don't know. It's not that they don't
Yes.
want to know. It's not that they're trying to be ignorant. They just don't know.
Especially
So when
because
you-
our whitewashed history.
Yeah. So when you come and you educate, I think that's a pro right there. A con would be, again, the way they depict it. Sometimes white people come and hate and say, no, that was a good thing, or no, we should have, like, some things that, it's just because they don't understand. And sometimes they do understand and intentionally still want to be racist. There was a woman who was taking care of an elderly woman.
Yes.
Like, was
Oh,
home.
the Ghanaian woman.
She spit on her like 4 or 5 times. And the woman handled it with such poise, such class. She didn't say anything. One, because we respect our elders, but the woman spitting on her, like, she's an old woman who obviously grew up during the slavery era, grew up during the Jim Crow era, all those things. So she's spitting on this woman who's taking care of her in her house, washing her dishes for her. And she just stood
Wiping
there,
her butt.
wiped off the spit, and continued on with her work. I think that shows, one, we have poise, and sometimes, yes, we need to speak up and get a little aggressive for people to hear us.
So this is the last thing I want us to touch on, and that is knowing everything that you know. And I'm just gonna guess most of us know about Jim Crow, the redlining, more than our parents do. So knowing everything we know, and knowing that most of the issues that African Americans face now are actually rooted from all these for everything that happened in the past.
Yeah, these races.
How do you explain that to your parents, and especially our community of African immigrants, to understand what is going on, to understand the lack of job, to understand the mass incarceration, how can we explain that and make sure that our parents, being African immigrants, coming to this country, can actually have an understanding?
Social media. Social media is a big resource, because sometimes our parents are stuck in these racist ways, especially because, when I talked to my great-grandmother on my dad's side of the family, she was picking cotton. So my dad is stuck in these racist ways. It's like, that's white people stuff. Don't do that. So it's kind of, social media is a big help. I'll send him videos talking about how us black people need to fix our ways, because we're also contributing to these racist things. Mm-hmm. It's not only white people that are contributing to these racist things. Like, especially, I always talk to my dad about how you don't have to be in the KKK, or you don't have to be a Proud Boy to be racist. Everybody in America, growing up in America, going to school in America is racist, because our history is whitewashed. System. It is very, very whitewashed, especially on TikTok. I'm seeing culture that I didn't even know about. Mm-hmm. Something that my history teacher should have taught me back in 4th grade. These simple things that could have changed my life when I was little, and I'm still little. I'm acting like I'm 25. These things that when I was, a little like 5, that could have changed my life. Could have changed the way I viewed the world in a good way. Mm-hmm. Something that I could have educated my friends up in middle school. Something that I could have educated my teachers with. That could have changed the world positively. That we wouldn't be here if some of these history things weren't taught. We wouldn't be here. George Floyd wouldn't be dead, or the way we handled George Floyd wouldn't have happened if these things were taught to us. Breonna Taylor would have been handled way, way better. It would have been handled very greatly, like amazing. But
I would say our parents come here and they make it, so to say, and they say, why can't they get up and get a job? Exactly. Or why can't they go do it? We did it. We came here with nothing and we did it. It's a system. Once there's a system, it's very hard to break out of this system. I recently read a speech that James Baldwin gave in 1963. I talked to teachers. I suggest everybody read it or listen to it. He's talking about how the education system has the biggest impact on how black people are today and will be for a long time if the system doesn't break. We have a school to prison pipeline. We have slavery to prison pipeline. Prisons were created to keep black people.
Slavery pipeline,
right.
Yeah.
It's that there weren't black people on the street.
So there wasn't black people on the street. Once black people started being able to get educated, what they do, they limit their education. Right. They don't tell them their whole history. They don't tell them everything that they need to know. They don't even teach white people, white children. They don't teach white students everything they need to know. Right. So it becomes this system of, once I get out of school, there's nothing for me. There's no college I can go to. Why? Because I didn't pass my classes. Mm-hmm. So what do? Become a criminal. That's all I have left, right? They become criminals, then we have this mass incarceration. Oh, you want a job? No that still happens to this day. People aren't giving African Americans jobs. Why? Because of the way they look, because of the color of their skin. Right.
Sometimes it's just as simple as your name.
Yeah.
If I can't pronounce your name, if your name is ghetto, I'm not gonna hire you.
And that's that's where the privilege of African immigrants also come in, because it's something we don't talk about, right? Because right now, even in the mainstream media, people are starting to use the fact that African immigrants are coming here and making it against African Americans. Right. You'll see people say, well, if if somebody came from Nigeria and is able to make it, what excuse do you have as an African American not to make it?
The excuse is the system.
Exactly.
It's a system. If your entire family was relying on checks from the government, that's all you know. All you know is to work 9 to 5 at McDonald's and then pick up a check. That's all you know.
Because they can't.
And when it's all you know, that's all you can be. That's all you can do. Our parents, African immigrants want opportunity to change. They start with the 9 to 5 job. Then what? They upgrade. Because they want to be able to provide for their family back home. They have a goal.
Right.
And black Americans are just here. They don't have a goal yet. Right?
So how do we bridge that gap of making sure that African immigrants are understanding that they are making it because the system favors them.
Well, African.
I wouldn't say the system favors
It
them.
almost does, because here's the thing: when right, if we're applying for the same job just based on names, the African immigrant may be going first, right? Second of all, is when a lot of African immigrants come here when they have already studied,
Okay, wait.
right?
Some, yes,
True,
most, but
right.
their studies can't transfer.
Wait, let me
Right?
say this.
They can't. There's doctors here who can't become doctors in America because it doesn't transfer.
But here's the
Yes.
thing: their mindset has already changed because they benefited of their education.
Yes, but let me say
They
this.
know what they can do. They have realized
Right. It's
their
the
potential.
hmm But African, like the most educated group in America is
African immigrants.
African immigrants, right? Especially women. So our Nigerian women are the most educated group in America right now.
Mhm.
So they're more likely to get higher positions in healthcare because they do know English, especially because you're in Africa, the way they teach students is way better than they do here in America. By the time they're in sixth grade, they're already learning high school stuff.
I would say the education system, having been through both, I would say the education system is way better.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, you're in sixth grade already learning high school stuff in Africa because of the way they teach. Of course, the way you get to school, or you have to pay to go to school there. Not always here in America, but if we make resources easier for children in Africa to get to school, and they come back here to America, oh my gosh, America will be great. We will be the point of success. We will be the point of resources. But it's over there in Africa because they know how to keep their resources there. They know not to pollute their areas because they're using glass. They're not using plastic like we're doing over here in America. We're not killing our animals over there. And when they do kill the animals, because they really do need to kill them. They're over there because they know how to work their resources. They know how to use their resources without killing them.
I beg to differ a little bit there. We have resources, but we don't know how to use them so that we can benefit from them. We have a lot of resources.
But that's certain countries.
But one thing you said about names, our names are usually much harder to pronounce
Right.
than a Black American's name might be.
Right.
So I don't think name has anything to do with it. I
Especially
think
our last names.
coming here and making it in America is all about connections. If you know somebody who knows somebody, then you can make it. If that's what, for example, here at ALG, we have Mr. Papa Dia here. He knows people who can help other people.
Right.
He doesn't know anything about the healthcare field. He doesn't know anything about certain fields.
But he can help him.
Exactly. He knows people who can help people. That's how you make it in America, with connections. That's exactly how you make it here.
But
You're talking about school. In Africa, it's about memorizing. It's a different way of learning. You have to memorize. You have to know it. Here it's about learn it, pass the test, you're good.
Right.
There's no real teaching here.
That's what my mom was
Unless
telling
you like it, it's not going to stick at all. I don't remember anything I learned in first grade. Why? Because it doesn't stick.
That's exactly what my mom was telling me. She was saying that she wouldn't go to sleep unless she memorized it. Every day after school, she'll come home with her mom, and if she didn't memorize it, she'll get beaten.
I have to tell you guys, you have to memorize and you have to recite.
Exactly.
Yes.
I've been through it.
It's a system. It's a system. Our education system, yes, it's
But
trash. But
Very
coming
important.
back to the subject and closing, for Africans, first generation kids who are out there who, maybe your younger siblings, maybe in second grade, or people, maybe even your age that are struggling with their self-identity, do you have any message for people your age who are struggling with self-identity?
I would say do your research. Get to know where you're from, because the more you know, the more you'll love it. Ask your parents questions. Ask them, what did my grandma do? What did my great-grandpa do? Asking questions, doing research, you'll find out how you want to identify yourself. For me personally, I had a big problem with self-identity growing up, especially through elementary and middle school, just because you care so much about what other people think. But we need to stop caring what other people think and really, if you're proud of yourself, if you're confident in yourself, that's all that matters. If you can say proudly that I'm African or that I'm Hispanic or that I'm Asian or anything, then that's all that matters. You shouldn't have to listen to what others say, rely on what other people say in order to be happy with yourself. I would say do your research, find out who you really are, learn more, because school, if you're going off of school, you're not going to have an identity.
anything.
You're not going to know anything about yourself. So please do more research, learn more about yourself, make friends with people, make connection with people that
Right.
who look like you or who don't look like you, so you can learn more from them. And
Right.
I think it's just getting to know people, doing research, figuring out who
Yeah.
you really truly are, and then from there identifying yourself, figuring out what do I want to be.
Resources are everything. I don't want, because my experience is different than everybody others. I have a mom who taught me things, but there's some people who don't have that. Some people's parents are deceased, or some people's parents are somewhere else in the world that they don't know of. You are your own person. You don't have to attach to a culture because somebody else did it. I want you to do your research, and I want you to calm down. You need to come to resources, especially ALG. If you come here, we will help you.
Come to Youth Empowerment Group. We got you.
We have you. You are an amazing person. You are an African. You are descendants of kings and queens. You are descendants of Egyptians. Your skin color is beautiful. Don't feel pressure to do anything. You are an amazing human being. Just sit down and learn your history. Because that history that you were taught in 6th grade is not going to teach you anything.
Seriously.
Don't just forget it.
All right, great. Well, thank you, everybody. I can truly say, and I mean it this time, that this has been my favorite show so far. I'm sorry for everybody else who's been here, but this has been the best show that we've had. And, just watching these amazing young women, you can see for yourself that our future is in good hands. We have a community, and we have these people who will stand up for our community and make sure that we become a better community. So this was it, and this is it for today's show. We'll see you next week for another topic.
Bye.
And thank you. And also tonight, if you have not registered yet, if you yourself need, or anyone who needs legal help, we do have our free legal clinic tonight. You can head to our website and do your registration. If you don't need and you know somebody else who needs it, it's a free legal clinic. You can come and get advice from our legal experts. So we'll see you next Monday on another show. Thank you.